Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap-up, where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. I have just a few books to talk about this week. I might be reading less this year, only because I need to find a way to carve in some immersive language learning type of activities, which in my case means I have to watch television and movies. I know that sounds probably ridiculous to many people because I know it's so much part of people's culture. And I do watch every once in a while, I'll watch a show, but I fundamentally just read. That's usually my go-to. But in order for me to really immerse myself in language and to really get the benefits of listening skills and pronunciation and comprehension, a really great way is to watch shows and movies in that language. I think there's also cultural aspects too. And so luckily, with advent of Netflix and Prime and some of these other types of access, and there might be, I think there are even some apps that you can watch and work on your language online. I'm going to spend a little bit more time trying to do that. So if you have any recommendations for me of French or Italian movies or TV shows, please let me know specifically if you think that I would like them. I sat down last weekend and I made a massive list for myself. And so we're just going to slowly go through them all. But I'm very excited for that opportunity. And that might also mean these videos will get a little less long, which could be good as well. But let's get into what I read this week. So I put myself on the hold for this ages ago, forgot I even did it. So imagine my surprise when the new Outlander book arrived. This is number 9, Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone by Diana Gabaldon. I was given access to the audiobook almost the first week that it was released. So it was pretty exciting, and luckily I had just finished one audiobook, was looking for my next one, and voila. So the thing with the Outlander series is that we've got a mixture of 3 genres working all together. We have historical fiction. So this is set in the era of the Jacobite Rebellion as well as the American Revolution. And so it's set both in Scotland as well as in the United States. And there's a little bit in Paris as well. It's also a book about time travel. So one of our main characters, Claire Fraser, is or has accidentally found herself transported from right after World War II, so I think literally 1945, straight into 1746 or something like that, in the height of the Jacobite Rebellion in Scotland. And so that adds an interesting element and dynamic. And then the third is a romance, a very interesting long burn romance between Claire and a man that she meets in Scotland, Jamie Fraser, who's a little younger than she is. And Claire's already married in the World War II time, post-World War II time. So I understand and absolutely get why some people read the first one and did not want to continue, because there's a lot of violence against women and misogyny and some difficult aspects about the romance as it started between Claire and Jamie. Completely get it. I, for one, kind of really gelled with Claire as a character, and I really liked her fire and her intelligence. She was a nurse, and so she brings a lot of knowledge, and I like how Diana Gabaldon deals with that and talks about that. And I also like Jamie, and I like them together. So for me, it's been an enjoyable thing. And we even like the TV show, so much so that my husband will tell me when your show is on. Interesting that, how he always seems to know when my show is on. And will find himself sitting in the same room of our two rooms, our bedroom and our living room. He'll be there watching the show with me. So it's an adventure. It's historical. It has these fantastical time travel elements. In this one, we have the Frasers have settled in North Carolina, and they've been here for a while. A few books have been set in the United States. It's 1779, so we know that there's already been the Declaration, and there's starting to be alignment of people, either you're with the British or you're not. And they know what's going to happen. They are aware of how this is going to go, but they can't really talk about it. So they're trying to bob and weave and dodge any kind of alliance that they have to declare in their little homestead that they've set up, the Scottish Ridge, with a land grant that they were given, and with all of the Scottish Highlanders that have come over with them. And these, in essence, were people that were in the Jacobite rebellion that left or were exiled. And so, you know, the things that I love about this series are the family and the way she's built out the stories of the children and the grandchildren. We've kind of evolved and expanded the scope of what she's trying to do, but at the same time, the tension of what's coming is always present. So I just enjoy it, and it's really good in audio. It's really good in audio. So yeah, liked it, like to continue, and you know, not sure when the next one will be, but we shall see. Next up, I wanted to read a book by Sarah Winman. I read her book, The Tin Man, and absolutely loved it. Look at that cover, so beautiful. And this was actually signed by her. So nice little addition to my collection. This was a heartbreaking, very emotional story of a man who was kind of a fulcrum in a love triangle with a man and kind of a best friend and his wife. And just, it's about grief and loss, and yeah, it was quite emotional, quite beautiful. So I wanted to read her next book, especially when I found out it was set in Florence. This is still life, as you can see right there. Really beautiful cover with all of the tiles and the like. This is a completely different reading experience. This is quirkier. This is sweeter. It doesn't have that pain. It has some pathos, but it does not have the level. And it's a little weirder. It's a little lighter, jauntier, might you say. The story opens in World War II, like right at that cusp of the end of World War II in Florence. We've got two characters. We've got Ulysses Temper, and he is a very young army man. And he is driving down the road, and he sees this woman, Evelyn Skinner, and she's an older woman, and she's standing on the side of the road, and they end up talking, and Evelyn gets in the Jeep with him, and they take a look at Florence. Evelyn is an art historian, restorer, and she ends up taking him to see some of the beauty that has not yet been destroyed in Florence. And that sparks something in Ulysses. It opens something up in him. He takes her back, and they part. He goes back in. He's still kind of stationed near Florence, and he spends a lot of time there. And one day he sees that a man is on the roof, and he's going to jump. And he doesn't even think. He just responds. He goes and he convinces and kind of pulls the man back and saves his life. They end up having like this really deep conversation, and you know, it's just a wonderful feel-good moment. He ends up leaving and going after the war ends. He ends up going back to London where he was living, and back to his wife. And they kind of were this torrid, tempestuous affair that just on a lark got married. But he is deeply, deeply in love with her, and has been for a while. She is a little less so. She has actually fallen in love with who she thinks is the love of her life, which was an American serviceman in London, and she has had his child, and she is waiting for him to return. And Ulysses finds all of this out when he returns to their spot, and it all centers around this pub, and there's a bunch of characters in the pub, including a parrot. That's the piece that I think is, didn't really need to be there. It's kind of a, quirky, odd little piece. Ulysses gets a call that the man that he saved has left him everything. Absolutely everything. And so there is a home in Florence, in Santo Spirito, that is his, just for the taking. And he's depressed about what's going on with Peg, the woman that he loves. And the child is about 7 or 8, and she and Peg don't get along at all. Peg doesn't understand her and really bonds with Ulysses. And there's another man of this cast who also is ready for an adventure. And they all go off and move to Florence, thereby severing kind of this gang that hangs out in this bar. That's as far as I'm gonna say. But if you like stories about character and life and life affirming, and if you love Florence, this might be a book that you would enjoy. Again, there's a sweetness to it. There's also kind of an interaction with literature in here that I'm not going to talk too much about, but that I enjoyed. Very character-driven, a lot of LGBTQ characters in here, which was great. I enjoyed it, but I think it's because I literally needed some lightness and being in some of these spots and being able to see and read about Florence through the way she describes it was absolutely delightful. So I enjoyed this very much. The next book I picked up was one of my Book of the Month Club choices from a while ago. This is Libertie by Kaitlyn Greenidge. Gorgeous cover here. With this book, I really liked how it started. And I really liked the ending, but there was sections in between that didn't work for me as well. But I still think it's a good book. So let me tell you what it's about. The setting is in Reconstruction era Brooklyn, and we have Libertie and her mother are living in her mother's, in essence, office, and they are a part of a network that are helping slaves escape. And the mother helps to revive slaves that have been transported in coffins, in boxes, and given drugs to calm them and to kind of make them sleep through so that they don't say anything or don't move. Libertie is kind of brought into this at a very early age and makes for really interesting situations and dynamics in this town that they live in Brooklyn, or a section of Brooklyn that they live in, which is predominantly Black free people. Her mother is one of the first female Black doctors in the United States, based on a true character, by the way. And her mother is very well respected and very, very smart. But she is determined that Libertie is going to have a different future than she did, and going to, excel in ways that she wasn't able to, given all of the strife that she had to live through. But Libertie doesn't want that, and Libertie is a really frustrating character. She is willful. She's obnoxious. She says things she shouldn't say. And she's got a lot of rage in her, a lot of anger, a lot of rage. And mostly it's because her mother doesn't see her. She goes off to college, and it's a medical training. And that's the first time that she makes her own friends and establishes some kind of independence. And she's incredibly hurt with every single letter that her mother sends includes homework, and is like this constant pushing her and wanting to know, what are your grades, what are you getting, and micromanaging her life. And then she also starts to introduce this new character, Emmanuel, who has shown up and is learning from her mother. And she's incredibly jealous that this Emmanuel can do no wrong. And so she immediately just hates this man. She goes back and is there and all of a sudden recognizes that Emmanuel sees her. He's allowed to express rage and anger and frustration in a way that her mother never lets her express. But he sees a commonality with her, and he promises her a love affair of equals. So up to there, I loved it. I thought it was really good. At that point, I was like, oh no, don't do it. She does, and they end up moving to Haiti. A lot of interesting things happen there. I loved the descriptions of Haiti. I loved a lot of what was going on in terms of the culture and how it differed from the United States and what was happening at the same time. But the interpersonal dynamics there really I felt lost me. I wasn't as interested in that, and it felt like it was a more typical story at that stage than it had been earlier on. So I think it's a good book. I'm very glad I read it. I think Kaitlyn Greenidge can write, and I'm looking forward to reading more from her. Okay, now let's talk about what I'm currently reading or not currently reading. I'm putting this off. I'm not going to read this until later on this month because I've got a lot of things going on. This is Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time, Volume 4, Sodom and Gomorrah, translated by John Sturrock. Yeah, I'll get back to this. Why pretend, right? Instead of that, I'm reading a couple things that are really interesting right now. One is I'm flying through this. This is The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanigahara. Reading this with Leo of A Little Book Life. We needed to go back and read this. This is the first from Yanigahara in anticipation of To Paradise, which is being released later, I think this week. So we should be finishing this up and then rolling straight into the next. Very interested in Yanigahara's focus on suffering. So she's focusing on suffering and power in this. This is based on a real-life anthropologist who was a pedophile. And it has a bit of a Lolita vibe to it in the sense of we're reading the narration of the anthropologist himself talking to us as he's narrating his life story. This anthropologist really came into fame when he found a remote island with another more prominent anthropologist. This is him in his early part of his career. It seems that the people living on this very, very remote, small island in Micronesia don't age. They remain young at a certain age. It seems like frozen in time, but they mentally deteriorate. And he is the one who supposedly found them and did this original studies. He's telling his story as a means to get himself out of trouble or explain his side of it, but he has already been convicted of sex with a child, sex crimes, of all sorts of things, because he actually brought children back and adopted like 49 of the children from this village back to the United States, and then all these things came out. So the setup is quite interesting. It's definitely wrestling with the ideas of power of colonialism. I love a good wrestling with colonialism and its impacts. And it's just an interesting way to do it through the eyes of the oppressor, of the actual person who's doing it. So we end up judging him and looking over him as he's talking about it, but also observing his observations of this village and how they behave and what's normal, what isn't normal, all of that kind of thing. We have a fourth left. I think it's about to be gnarly. It's already gotten really complicated, really morally dicey. So I'm kind of girding myself for the last fourth. So we'll see what Hanya Yanigahara brings to light with To Paradise. And I would love to get a biography on her. An autobiography would be great. You know, because here's someone who lives with a tremendous amount of privilege. She is the editor for the T magazine, the New York Times Magazine supplement, and did Travel and Leisure. She used to edit Travel and Leisure. If you've ever seen visions of her apartment, it's just her. Oh my God, her book collection is unbelievable, and her library is gorgeous. And she is from Hawaii, and so there's just so many interesting things that you can start to see threaded through her material. So when we read the third, it'll provide a better understanding of what are the themes that she takes across. But I've heard that suffering and power are part of that. We will see. Then I haven't gotten too far in The Years by Virginia Woolf. I'm reading this with Elizabeth of Bookish North, and already it is, I'm more comfortable from the get-go. So we have a few characters, but it's not as overwhelmingly stream of consciousness as the last book that we read, The Waves. This is a little more grounded in place, grounded in what's happening to people during different epochs and different times in the culture. So enjoying this so far. I put this down for a bit. This is Burntcoat by Sarah Hall. I was doing this in audio. I wanted to switch to the actual text because the sex scenes just did not work for me the way they were being described in the narration of them. So I will pick this back up, but not right now. I just wanted to close the loop on that one. So that's what I'm currently reading. I'm looking for an audiobook since I finished Outlander. I might see if I can find any of these, which are kind of the books that I really wanted to finish at the end of the year. See if I can find any of these in audio that might work. I have two that I want to read, hopefully by the end of this month. Maybe I'll start one next week. The first is A Bookshop in Algiers by Kaouther Adimi. Really lovely, lovely cover. Nice slim little book. And this would be for Invisible Cities, Algeria. So I would like to get to this. And then I haven't read anything for January in Japan, and obviously I need to get to the Ishiguro because I love Ishiguro. This is Clara and the Sun. So those are potentials for maybe next week. We'll see. We'll see. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.